What happens when the most controversial figure in American politics sits across from one of television's most outspoken hosts? You're about to witness a television moment that nobody saw coming, a clash so intense it left the studio in complete shock. Before we dive into this incredible confrontation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity political debates. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single word of what's about to unfold. The studio lights were blazing, as usual on The View, but there was an electric tension in the air that even the seasoned production crew could feel. Donald Trump had agreed to appear on the show, something that had been months in the making through back-channel negotiations and careful scheduling. The audience was packed with a mix of supporters and critics, creating an atmosphere that was already charged before a single word was spoken. Whoopi Goldberg sat at her familiar spot at the head of the table, her expression serious as she shuffled through her notes one final time. The other co-hosts, Joy Behar, Sarah N., Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny Hostin, were positioned around the curved desk, each knowing that this interview could become television history. The producers had briefed everyone extensively about keeping things civil, but everyone in that room knew that when Trump and Whoopi got together, anything could happen. As the theme music faded and the cameras rolled, Whoopi looked directly into the lens with that piercing stare she was known for. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest today. Former President Donald Trump is here to discuss his campaign, his policies, and well, probably a whole lot more. Please welcome Donald Trump. The audience erupted in a mixture of cheers and boos as Trump walked onto the set, waving to the crowd with that familiar confident stride. He took his seat across from Whoopi, and for a brief moment, there was an almost cordial exchange of pleasantries. But anyone who knew both personalities understood that this calm wouldn't last long. "Thank you for having me, Whoopi," Trump said, settling into his chair. "It's great to be here on The View. I know we don't always see eye to eye, but I respect the platform you have here." Whoopi nodded curtly, her expression already showing signs of skepticism. "Well, we appreciate you coming on. I have to say, there are a lot of questions that need to be asked, and I hope you're prepared to give some real answers today." "I'm always prepared to give real answers, Whoopi. That's what I do. I tell it like it is, whether people like it or not." The tension was already building, and it was clear from Whoopi's body language that she wasn't in the mood for what she might perceive as typical Trump rhetoric. She leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on that edge that regular viewers knew meant business. "Okay, let's start with something that's been on a lot of people's minds. Your legal troubles. How do you expect the American people to trust you with the presidency again when you're facing multiple criminal charges?" Trump's demeanor shifted immediately. The cordial facade dropped, and his voice took on that defensive tone that had become his trademark when challenged. "First of all, Whoopi, those are witch hunts, every single one of them. The American people see right through this political persecution. These are Democrat prosecutors trying to interfere with an election because they know they can't beat me fairly." Political persecution. Whoopi's voice rose slightly. "These are legitimate legal proceedings with evidence and grand juries. You can't just dismiss everything as a witch hunt when things don't go your way." "I absolutely can when that's exactly what it is," Trump shot back, his voice getting louder. "Look at the timing, Whoopi. Look at who's bringing these cases. It's all coordinated, it's all political, and the American people are smart enough to see through it." The other co-hosts exchanged glances, sensing that this was escalating faster than anyone had anticipated. Joy Behar tried to interject with a question about policy, but Whoopi held up her hand, clearly not finished with this line of questioning. "So you're saying that every prosecutor, every grand jury, every judge who's ruled against you is part of some massive conspiracy? Don't you think that's a little far-fetched?" Trump leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What's far-fetched is thinking that the establishment doesn't want to stop me from draining the swamp. They've been after me since day one, from the Russia hoax to the impeachments to these bogus indictments. But you know what? It's only making me stronger in the polls." "The Russia investigation wasn't a hoax," Whoopi said firmly. "People went to prison. There were real crimes committed. That investigation was started on a lie, funded by Hillary Clinton. And you know it," Trump responded, his voice getting more animated. "But the mainstream media, including shows like this one, pushed that narrative for years without any evidence." The audience was getting restless, with some people shouting support and others voicing their disagreement. Whoopi tried to maintain control, but it was clear that this interview was heading into uncharted territory. The producers in the control room were frantically making hand signals, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. "We're going to take a quick break," Whoopi announced, "but when we come back, we have a lot more to discuss with former President Trump." As the cameras rolled again, the tension in the studio had somehow managed to intensify even further during the commercial break. Trump was visibly agitated, adjusting his tie and muttering something under his breath, while Whoopi sat stone-faced, clearly prepared to continue her line of aggressive questioning. The other co-hosts looked like they were bracing for impact. Welcome back to The View, Whoopi said, her voice steady but with an underlying current of determination. We're here with former President Donald Trump, and we were just discussing his legal issues. But I want to move on to something else that's been concerning a lot of people. Your comments about the election being stolen. Do you still maintain that the 2020 election was rigged? Trump didn't hesitate for even a second. Absolutely I do. That election was rigged, it was stolen, and everybody knows it. The evidence is overwhelming, but the courts wouldn't even look at it. They threw out cases on technicalities, not on the merits. The courts did look at the evidence. Whoopi countered, her voice getting sharper. 60-plus cases were thrown out, including by judges that you appointed. Your own attorney general said there was no evidence of widespread fraud. Bill Barr was wrong, and he knows it, Trump said, waving his hand dismissively. He didn't want to fight. He was part of the swamp that wanted to get rid of me. But the American people know what happened. They saw the irregularities. They saw the mail-in ballot harvesting. They saw the drop boxes. What they saw, Whoopi said, leaning forward with intensity, was a fair election where more people voted against you than voted for you. And instead of accepting that, like every other president in American history, you decided to undermine democracy itself. The audience was getting louder now, with clear divisions between those cheering and those booing. Trump's face was reddening, and his voice was getting more forceful by the minute. I didn't undermine anything, Whoopi. I fought for election integrity. I fought for the American people who had their votes canceled out by illegal ballots. And you want to talk about undermining democracy? What about the Russia hoax? What about trying to impeach me twice? What about these bogus indictments? Those impeachments were based on your actions, Whoopi shot back. You asked a foreign country to investigate your political opponent, incited an insurrection at the Capitol. I did no such thing, Trump said, his voice now noticeably louder. I told people to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard, but you and the fake news media twisted my words like you always do. Joy Behar tried to jump in, but Trump continued without pause. And as for Ukraine, I had every right as president to investigate corruption. Joe Biden bragged about getting that prosecutor fired, bragged about it on video. But somehow I'm the one who gets impeached for asking questions about it. You withheld military aid to pressure them, Whoopi said, her voice rising to match his intensity. That's an abuse of power, and you know it. I did my job as president, something Joe Biden has never been able to figure out how to do. Look at the mess he's made of this country, inflation through the roof, the border wide open, crime in the streets. But somehow you want to focus on me instead of the disasters happening right now. Sunny Hostin tried to interject with a question about immigration policy, but Whoopi wasn't finished. She had clearly decided that this was her moment to confront Trump directly, and she wasn't backing down. You keep deflecting to Biden, but we're talking about you and your fitness for office. How can you ask the American people to trust you, again when you've shown such disrespect for the rule of law and democratic institutions? Disrespect for the rule of law. Trump's voice was getting louder and more aggressive. I'm the one being persecuted by weaponized justice system. I'm the one whose rights are being violated. I'm the one whose home was raided by the FBI. Like, I'm some kind of terrorist. You had classified documents that didn't belong to you, Whoopi said, not giving an inch. Documents that you refused to return when asked nicely. Those were my documents, Whoopi. I had every right to those documents as a former president. But they raided my home. They went through my wife's closet. They went through my son's room. It was disgraceful and unprecedented. What was unprecedented, Whoopi said, her voice now matching his in volume and intensity, was a president taking classified documents to his private residence and refusing to give them back. You don't know what you're talking about, Trump said, pointing his finger across the table. You're just repeating the fake news talking points without understanding the facts. I understand the facts just fine, Whoopi replied, her own finger now pointing back at him. And the fact is that you think the rules don't apply to you. The other co-hosts were now looking genuinely concerned as the confrontation escalated, beyond anything they had expected. The audience was getting more vocal, with some people standing and shouting their support for one side or the other. The producers in the control room were having heated discussions about whether to cut the interview short. The rules don't apply to me, Trump said, his voice now approaching a shout. I'm the one being prosecuted while Hunter Biden gets a sweetheart deal. I'm the one being investigated while Hillary Clinton destroyed 33,000 emails. I'm the one being attacked while Joe Biden took classified documents for decades. We're not talking about them right now, Whoopi said firmly. We're talking about you and your actions. Of course, we're not talking about them, Trump said sarcastically, because you're fake news just like the rest of them. You only want to attack Trump, never hold Democrats accountable. Fake news. Whoopi's voice was now filled with indignation. I've been in this business for decades, and I don't need lectures about journalism from someone who lies as easily as breathing. The word lies hung in the air like a lightning bolt that had just struck the studio. Trump's face went from red to almost purple, and for a moment, there was complete silence except for the murmur of the increasingly agitated audience. Even the seasoned television professionals on the panel seemed stunned by how quickly this had escalated to personal attacks. Lies, Trump said, his voice now dangerously quiet, which somehow felt more threatening than when he had been shouting. You want to talk about lies, Whoopi? Let's talk about the lies you and your network pushed about Russian collusion for 3 years. Let's talk about the lies about the laptop being Russian disinformation. Let's talk about the lies about the vaccine stopping transmission. Don't you dare turn this around on me, Whoopi fired back, her voice trembling with anger. I report the news. I don't make up elaborate conspiracies to explain away my failures. Report the news. Trump laughed bitterly. You read Democrat talking points. There's a difference, though I wouldn't expect you to understand that. The audience was now in complete chaos, with people shouting over each other and some security guards moving closer to the set. Sarah N. tried desperately to change the subject, but neither Trump nor Whoopi was paying attention to anyone else in the room anymore. I've been doing this job since before you ever thought about politics, Whoopi said, her voice now shaking with rage. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. I don't need some reality TV star telling me how to do journalism. Reality TV star. Trump's voice exploded back to shouting level. I built a business empire worth billions of dollars. I became president of the United States. I rebuilt the military, secured the border, made America energy independent, and brought peace to the Middle East. What have you done besides sit here and attack Republicans all day? I've used my platform to speak truth to power instead of kissing up to dictators and making excuses for insurrectionists, Whoopi shot back without missing a beat. Dictators. Trump was now half standing from his chair. I'm the one who stood up to China, who made NATO pay their fair share, who moved our embassy to Jerusalem, who took out the world's #1 terrorist. But you call me the dictator, while Biden weaponizes the justice system against his political opponents. You're the one who called for terminating the Constitution, Whoopi said, also rising from her seat. You're the one who said you'd be a dictator on day one. That was a joke about drilling for oil, and you know it, Trump said, now fully standing and pointing across the table. But you take everything out of context, because that's what fake news does. Stop calling me fake news, Whoopi shouted, her voice now echoing through the studio. I am not fake news. This show is not fake news. We ask tough questions because that's what journalists are supposed to do. Journalists? Trump laughed mockingly. You're activists pretending to be journalists. You had your mind made up about me before I even walked through that door. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to speak up, but Trump continued his tirade. You know what your problem is, Whoopi? You can't handle the fact that I accomplished more in 4 years than your precious Democrats have in decades. You can't handle that. The American people see through your bias. My problem, Whoopi's voice reached a crescendo that could probably be heard in the street. My problem is that I'm sitting across from someone who tried to overturn an election and is now running again like nothing happened. I didn't try to overturn anything, Trump roared back. I tried to save this country from election fraud, but people like you were too invested in getting me out of office to care about the truth. The truth. Whoopi was now leaning across the table, her finger jabbing in Trump's direction. The truth is that you lost. You couldn't handle losing, and you put this entire country through hell because of your ego. My ego. Trump's voice was now hoarse from shouting. You want to talk about ego? You think you're some kind of moral authority sitting behind that desk? You think you have the right to lecture me about democracy while you spent 4 years trying to delegitimize my presidency? The other co-hosts had essentially given up trying to maintain any semblance of control over the interview. Joy Bay, Looked, shell-shocked, Sarah N. was frantically shuffling papers. And Sonny Hostin appeared to be trying to signal the producers off camera. I didn't have to delegitimize anything, Whoopi screamed. You did that all by yourself, with your Twitter tantrums and your constant attacks on anyone who dared to disagree with you. Twitter tantrums. Trump was now pacing behind his chair like a caged animal. I used social media to speak directly to the American people because I couldn't trust the fake news media to report the truth. But you got me banned because you couldn't handle the competition. Nobody got you banned, Whoopi said, though her voice was starting to crack from the strain. You got yourself banned by inciting violence and spreading misinformation. Misinformation. Trump wheeled around to face her directly. Everything I said turned out to be true. The lab leak, the laptop, the spying on my campaign, the corruption in Ukraine, but you called it all misinformation because it didn't fit your narrative. Your narrative is that everyone else is wrong, and only you have the truth, Whoopi said, her voice now a combination of anger and exhaustion. That's not leadership, that's narcissism. Narcissism. Trump's voice cracked with indignation. I gave up a billionaire lifestyle to serve this country, and all I got in return was investigation after investigation. Impeachment after impeachment, and now indictment after indictment. But somehow, I'm the narcissist. The studio audience, had reached a fever pitch, with people now standing on their chairs and shouting at each other. Security guards were moving in closer, and the producers were making desperate hand signals from the control room. It was clear that this interview had spiraled completely out of control, and there was no putting this genie back in the bottle. The chaos in the studio had reached a breaking point that nobody in television had ever witnessed before. The audience was so loud that the microphones were struggling to pick up the heated exchange between Trump and Whoopi, both of whom were now red-faced and gesticulating wildly across the table. The other co-hosts had essentially become spectators to a political cage match that was playing out in real time on national television. "You know what, Whoopi?" Trump said, his voice now hoarse but still carrying that edge of fury that had been building throughout the interview. "I came on this show thinking maybe, just maybe, we could have an actual conversation about the issues that matter to the American people. But all you want to do is attack, attack, attack. I'm asking you legitimate questions," Whoopi shot back, though her own voice was showing signs of strain from the prolonged shouting match. "If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be running for president." Tough questions. Trump let out a bitter laugh that somehow managed to cut through the noise of the audience. "These aren't tough questions. These are gotcha attacks designed to make me look bad. You had your mind made up about me before I walked in here. I had my mind made up based on your actions," Whoopi replied, not backing down an inch. "Based on what you did to this country, what you did to our democracy, what you did to the office of the presidency." "What I did," Trump's voice exploded with renewed fury. "What I did was make America great again. What I did was secure the border, rebuild the economy, make us energy independent, and keep us out of wars. But you can't admit that because it destroys your narrative. Your narrative is built on lies," Whoopi said, her voice now taking on a tone of complete exasperation. "You lie about the election, you lie about the documents, you lie about the insurrection, you lie about everything." That was the final straw. Trump's face went from red to almost white with rage, and he slammed his hand down on the table with such force that it made everyone in the studio jump. The sound of his palm hitting the surface echoed through the suddenly quiet room like a gunshot. "That's it," Trump said, his voice now dangerously quiet but filled with more venom than when he had been shouting. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this garbage from someone who wouldn't know the truth if it hit her in the face. The truth is sitting right across from you," Whoopi said, rising from her chair to match his energy. "The truth is that you're a threat to everything this country stands for." A threat. Trump was now backing away from the table, his hands raised in a gesture of complete disgust. "The only threat here is to honest journalism, but that died a long time ago on shows like this one." The audience had gone relatively quiet, sensing that something unprecedented was about to happen. Even the most experienced television viewers could tell that this was no ordinary heated interview. This was a complete breakdown of any pretense of civility or professional conduct. "Don't you dare walk away from me," Whoopi called out as Trump continued to back away from the set. "Don't you dare run away when the questions get too hard." Trump stopped dead in his tracks and wheeled around to face her one final time. His eyes were blazing with an intensity that made even the security guards take a step forward. "Run away. I've been fighting fake news my entire political career. I've been fighting people like you who think you have the right to destroy anyone who doesn't bow down to your liberal agenda." Liberal agenda. Whoopi was now following him, moving around the table with her finger pointed directly at him. "My agenda is the truth, something you wouldn't recognize if it was written in gold letters on the side of one of your buildings. Your truth is whatever fits your political narrative," Trump said, now gesticulating wildly as he continued to back toward the exit. "Your truth changes depending on who's in power and what serves your interests. Get back here and finish this conversation like a man," Whoopi shouted, her voice now carrying across the entire studio. "You wanted to be on this show. You wanted this interview, now see it through." "I wanted an interview, not an ambush," Trump replied, his voice echoing as he got further from the main set. "I wanted to talk about the issues, not listen to personal attacks and character assassination." Character assassination. Whoopi was now at the edge of the set, with the other co-hosts looking on in complete shock. "Your character assassinated itself. I'm just reporting on it." Trump turned one final time, his face a mask of fury and disgust. "You know what, Whoopi? The American people see right through this. They see what you're doing. They see the bias. They see the hatred. And that's why I'm leading in every poll, because they're sick of people like you, people like me." Whoopi's voice cracked with emotion. "People who stand up for democracy. People who ask tough questions. People who won't let you get away with destroying this country. People who pretend to be journalists while pushing partisan propaganda." Trump shot back as he reached the edge of the studio. "People who have turned the media into a weapon against anyone who threatens the establishment." The studio had fallen into an eerie silence, with even the audience seeming to hold its breath as they watched this unprecedented confrontation reach its climax. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every word and gesture of what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked about television moments in history. "This interview is over," Trump announced, loud enough for everyone in the studio to hear clearly. "I don't have time for this nonsense. I have a country to save and an election to win. Don't you walk out on me," Whoopi called after him, her voice now a mixture of anger and desperation. "Don't you walk out on the American people who deserve answers. The American people will get their answers in November," Trump replied without turning around. "And they'll remember who tried to give them the truth and who tried to hide it from them." With that, Donald Trump walked off the view set, leaving behind a stunned studio audience, a group of shell-shocked co-hosts, and one furious Whoopi Goldberg. Standing at the edge of the set, watching him disappear through the studio doors, the cameras captured it all. Every dramatic word, every explosive moment, every second of what would go down as one of the most shocking confrontations in television history. As the credits rolled and the audience sat in stunned silence, everyone knew they had just witnessed something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Have you ever seen anything like this on television before? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on political interviews getting this heated. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.